Welcome back to Reading Bear. Today, we will take a look at some new revenge stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
First one is titled, Sleazy Lawyer Winds Up Helping to Pay for Coworker's Wedding. When I started working as a lawyer at a large law firm, staff members would often come to me with their legal problems. One day, a quiet young woman from the accounting department came into my office confused about a legal settlement she had gotten. The woman had been involved in a very minor car accident. She got talked into signing up with a lawyer whom she never even got to meet. Sometime after that, she received a call to come down to the lawyer's office to sign some papers that she didn't understand, was given a check for about $2,000 by some flunky, and then sent on her way. I borrowed all of her paperwork and figured out what had happened. My coworker was a victim of a capper scheme, which is when non-lawyers sign up clients for lawyers in return for a financial kickback. This is generally considered to be unethical and possibly illegal. Because many of these cases are near worthless, the lawyers quickly settle them for cheap and pocket 33% to 40% as their fee. When I checked the state bar records, I realized that the lawyer had signed the retainer agreement with my coworker after he had taken the bar exam but before he had officially become a lawyer. In other words, for several months, he had been illegally practicing law without a license. I was upset. I sent him a demand letter stating that I knew what he did. I bluffed him and said that, if he had been a real lawyer the entire time, he would have handled the case properly and would have gotten a much higher settlement. I told him that I wanted $5,000 to compensate my coworker. It would have been illegal for me to threaten to report him to the state bar or to the police if he did not pay, but that was the subtext. A few days later, I received a telephone call. Lawyer, in a pleading voice. What do you want? I don't have any malpractice insurance. Me, angrily, I don't want any insurance money. I would be just as happy to put you out of business. The next day, I received my demanded settlement check from the lawyer. I walked the check over to the accounting department and gave it to my coworker. The unexpected extra money came in very handy for her upcoming wedding, to which I was later invited and happily attended. It would have been illegal for the lawyer to demand that I not report him to the state bar or police in return for the check. Nonetheless, I decided not to report him. I figured that he deserved a second chance and did not want to ruin his life at the start of his legal career. Next one is titled, The Crooked Attorney. My boyfriend got an SOB scamming attorney in jail. So here is the tale of throws dust in campfire, the crooked attorney. In looking up this guy's information, he really was a POS. A local paper described him as reworded for privacy. These con artists are cutthroat and will do anything to get their money. They prey on unsuspecting victims and take out loans and falsify information. They take off with most of the money. The con artists are very skilled, and few of them are ever sent to prison. Until my boyfriend came along. My boyfriend, BF, moved to NYC from a state in the South. Freshly out of law school and riddled with student debt, he found a low-paying personal injury firm and settled in. Since money was tight, he found a roommate on Craigslist named Julie. Julie is a feisty Latina, and my boyfriend is pretty much Wonder Bread, but they hit it off very well. My boyfriend would go to Julie's job after work. She was a bartender, and they developed a very strong friendship. During this time, Julie meets a server, Luis. They hit it off and begin dating. My BF clicks with Luis, and they become a trio. Drunken tequila nights, peeing on the subway platform, my BF being taken to Latin clubs, they become the best of friends. Something that will play a role in this tale is that both Julie and Luis, and their families, are in the USA undocumented. Please don't turn this into a political post. So, Julie and Luis are getting serious, but don't have a lot of money, so they move in with Luis's elderly parents. My BF finds another place to live and they all still keep in touch. During all of this, Luis's dad had suffered an injury at work. He lost part of his finger and had hired a personal injury attorney, as known as POS. Apparently he was supposed to receive a $100,000 settlement, but some time had passed and still no update. Julie, since neither Luis or his dad spoke English, called Luis's father's insurance and asked about the status of the settlement. The insurance said, "Oh, the settlement's already been paid out?" That's when Julie called my BF, freaking out. Apparently this personal injury attorney had a history of being an ambulance chaser, and sought out clients here illegally. He held that over them and took their settlement money by forging documents. While there had been reports, the guy had been getting away with fraud for years. So, my BF tells Julie to tell the POS that she knows what's up. Apparently this guy thought his clients were too stupid to seek retribution. POS told Julie that he would return the money if she dropped her complaint against him. My boyfriend was livid at this POS taking advantage of immigrants and decided to get payback. He told Julie to record all of her conversations with him and keep records of any type of contact. Apparently POS was using other embezzled funds to hush clients like Julie. Julie met up with him a few times, always recording interactions and getting money from him. With evidence in place, my BF took all the evidence to the NYS Supreme Court, who investigates, and told them that he was representing Luis's dad. Apparently reports had happened for years, but nobody ever gave a damn until an attorney became involved. It turned out that POS had stolen over $400,000 from clients for years. It was a long trial, with my boyfriend representing Luis's dad and he having to testify. POS knew my BF had reported him and would glare at him from the stand. Long story short, POS pleaded guilty to charges of identity theft, fraud, grand larceny, etc. He was stripped of his ability to practice law and was sentenced to 7 years in jail. Luis's dad gave my boyfriend $1,000, he worked pro bono for them, and now my BF is the godfather to Julie and Luis's son. Luis's dad moved back to his native country and bought a beautiful house. All of POS victims got their money back through the lawyer's fund for client protection. Edit. The POS was also an immigrant. European. Last one is titled, Bank Screws Old Lady, Lawyer Screws Bank, Old Lady Gets Millions Back. Posted this on AskReddit a while back and somebody suggested I should cross-post here. Update. Lots of folks are asking the same questions, so I am editing this post to answer some. You will know them by the brackets, and frequent use of the phrase, OFFS. Financial advisors employed by a pretty major bank stole all the money of a wealthy old lady who was dying of Alzheimer's, and she didn't know anything until her lights were cut off. My brother was a pretty small-time lawyer, and got the call to represent her. Every other big-time attorney in the area had either passed on the case, or tried and failed to get anywhere. When you're up against a legal team that makes a collective $10,000 per hour, it's not easy. OFFS, maybe it wasn't $10K per hour to penny, give or take $1,000 and you get the point. And since banks always have mandatory arbitration clauses worked into their contracts, she couldn't sue or even do discovery, OFFS, proper discovery, then. Discovery as you and I know it, as it ought to be. Like, it was obvious what had happened, and the only people with access to the account were clearly implicated. But it was hard to prove without any access to bank records, and B, under arbitration, it wouldn't matter anyway. They could be criminally prosecuted, but the bank wouldn't have to pay back the money. Did I mention the bank had, at this point, frozen the lady's access to her own accounts, due to fraud? So she couldn't even get her own bank statements. FINRA did not really apply in this case for many reasons that I never understood properly then and neither remember nor care about now. Anyway, my bro became pretty obsessed with avenging this woman. By the time he got the case, she barely even knew what her own situation was most of the time. But her son just wanted to make the bank bend over, and my brother was all in. He managed to find an incredibly obscure technicality that nullified the arbitration clause, and was able to force a major bank into the discovery process. That alone was a huge enough deal that the decision was written up in many legal newspapers, OFFS, journals, figure it out, across the country. The technicality, in TLDR form, was that the bank failed to keep an original copy of the contract, so they couldn't prove there was an arbitration clause. It is apparently normal for them not to keep originals, but in this case they didn't even keep reliable copies, and neither person who signed the contracts could be deposed under oath to determine whether the clause existed. So the judge just threw out the clause. The obscure part was that the copies were almost exact duplicates of the original, but a few words had been changed and the pages were renumbered, and he caught the differences and pointed out that they weren't true duplicates. It wasn't really a loophole in the law so much as a flaw in the bank's bookkeeping. After fighting and delaying discovery until the very last minute, the bank dumped 200+ boxes of documents on my brother the Friday before the Monday discovery hearing. He had 72 hours to go through tens of thousands of pages of documents. OFFS, is it really that unbelievable that a lawyer would try to keep a case moving along? Turns out he didn't need the continuance so many of you, experts, claim he would have. This attitude explains a lot about a lot of cases. He rented himself a hotel for the weekend so he'd have no disturbances, had a friend bring a dolly and hand-truck the boxes to the hotel room, and got to work. In one of the boxes was an email between a bank VP and the bank's chief lawyer. I incorrectly described this as two VPs in my previous post, discussing how there would never be a discovery process, so there was no need to destroy documents, i.e. future evidence, and also saying that they weren't worried about the little old lady's lawsuit since the bank had frozen her accounts, so she wouldn't be able to pay her lawyer and he was just a small-time, country lawyer, their words, who would surely quit once he wasn't being paid. It wasn't like he worked for some huge firm that could just pay his bills while he worked. They also discussed how the lady would likely die of Alzheimer's before her accounts would be unfrozen once the fraud was proven to be false. OFFS, no, it's not necessarily client privilege. Even I know that is not a magic wand you can wave and make everything disappear. It fell outside the parameters of privilege. Do you really think the bank would have settled if they had felt otherwise? They had my bro all wrong, of course. He was working all day on paying cases and then staying up half the night working on this one, sometimes without getting paid anything for months. We did the math later, he made about $2.75 per hour for his work over a span of 7+ years. Anyway, these chuckleheads openly discussed several illegal acts in emails to each other, and then failed to destroy the paperwork proving they had actually undertaken those acts, which, legally, they could have destroyed at the time, but they were so arrogant they thought they didn't have to. When my brother entered that into evidence Monday morning, they immediately motioned for a recess and offered to settle for, an undisclosed sum. He also won his client $10 million, $13 million, in a separate part of the lawsuit. One agent recently finished serving a long sentence in the same federal prison as Bernie Madoff. He got prison time for tax fraud, and some combo of bank fraud, forgery, and perjury to the feds, and I think filing false documents. I can't remember which of these he pleaded guilty to, but those were the originally accusations. This is why he couldn't be deposed in the arbitration clause part. He had already pleaded guilty to some of these charges and was indicted on others, so the judge deemed his word under oath to be unreliable. He also lost his home, the beach home he bought with the old lady's money, had his financial broker license revoked, and his wife left him. However, his kid did get a private college education paid for in cash with the lady's money, and he bought $200,000 worth of wine that was never recovered. Sadly, the lady did in fact die before the case settled, so the money went to her son and to a large charitable trust that then elected my brother as the main trustee. So he gets to disburse the money he won in the settlement, and see a lot of people benefit from his work. The funniest part of this revenge was that the apparent motive for the theft was not just that the agent wanted to be rich, he had accomplices, but he was the main mastermind. He specifically wanted to use the money to enhance his standing in the community. So actually, he donated a lot of the stolen money to charities, so that he could be invited to huge galas, get philanthropic awards, etc. Now he is broke, unemployed, divorced, and disgraced, while my brother is going to galas and getting philanthropic awards with the money this guy helped pay for with the sale of his houses, cars, etc. Pretty sweet. ETA. I feel obliged to spread the anti-arbitration gospel of my brother. If it weren't for a fluke technicality that led to the boilerplate arbitration clause being thrown out, there would have been no discovery and no justice for this lady. Under arbitration clauses, you're not allowed to sue a bank, brokerage, financial advisor, etc. And without a lawsuit you can't do discovery. And financial agents cannot be forced to pay you back for money they steal, even if you can prove they stole it. In this case, discovery led to evidence of tax fraud on the part of one of the agents who stole the money and didn't report the income, and the feds then gained a lot more access to the records. In conclusion, arbitration benefits the corporation 98% of the time, at the consumer's expense. Opt out whenever possible. Thanks for listening.